Good morning and welcome to Maximum Change TV. My name is Dr. Philip Foster, and I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about the death of today's corporations. Now, I read an article in Forbes magazine on their website the other day by Drew Hansen. I've read several of Drew's articles. He's a great writer, and I happen to agree with what he's talking about. If you get a chance, check that article out. It's called "Will Today's Corporations Exist in a Decade?" Now, what caught my eye about this is the statement, will they exist? And I read his article with great interest because he begins the article with this idea that the death of corporations has not been overly exaggerated. And I absolutely agree with him. We're actually seeing a lot of pressures coming down on organizations right now that are causing them to change the way they address things culturally, internally at least. So, if I could, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about this article. He talks about several different areas that are causing these changes, and one of them is corporate erosion, and that basically is where workers, employees, are fleeing the current suffocating corporate culture, if you will. They're looking for an answer outside of the hierarchy or the traditional setting. He talks about in this article, Frederick Taylor's efficiency models. Employees are looking for a different culture, a different setting to work in. They're looking for more than just a paycheck. They're looking for more than just recognition with their name on the door in the corner office. Some of this is being caused by the millennials who are rejecting some of the old school ways of thinking. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of pushback from us traditionalists, those of us who were trained traditionally in business schools, that were pushing back and saying, no, this is the way it is. This is the way it always has been. And I say that that's a bunch of baloney. So here's the thing. Corporations are rejecting, newer corporations, if you will, startups and newer companies are rejecting these old ways of thinking. They're rejecting the command and control. In my book, The Open Organization, I talk about this, where organizations are shifting and changing the way that they're approaching. They're actually becoming flatter, more collaborative, more open. There's a lot of leadership sharing. There's a lot more servant leadership. The leaders are learning how to be coaches and mentors rather than demanding managers. There is a lot of change coming, and it cannot be just blamed on the millennials or Generation Y, and they can't be blamed on the Generation Z, which is coming up behind them. The reality is that hierarchies and top-down control, command control management cannot work in a fast-moving, globalized, dispersed economy that we see today. Now, I talk about in many of my videos about how the future of business looks more like less than 30% of the working population will be in full-time work. I talk about how we're moving toward a gig or freelance economy. These are things that are being talked about in Forbes and in Wall Street Journal and some of the other Harvard Business Review. They're all talking about this. I would tell you that if you're a manager today and you're a Gen Xer like I am, or maybe you are a boomer, or maybe you are a millennial, it doesn't matter. We need to pay attention to the fact that the command and control model that we have grown up with is no longer necessarily effective. Now, I want to just say with caution, there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all model. So when I say that, what I mean is that we have to, as different and individual organizations, find the path that makes most sense for the internal culture of the organization, the people that make up that organization, the products, and also the customers. We have to pay attention to that. But what I will say is the command control hierarchy pyramid system that we're used to, I think it's pretty much going away. Now, this article goes on to talk about corporate downsizing. I've already mentioned that. I think by the year 2040, we're looking at less than 30% of the working population will be in full-time work. That means that the majority of the people will be freelancers, independent contractors. Some of them will be unemployed. Some of them will be underemployed, meaning they have more than one job. Here's the thing. We need to figure out as individuals, as the workers of the future, How are we going to be well skilled for these changes? How are we going to be prepared for these changes? And on the corporate side, on the business side, how are we shifting to a culture where most of our employees are distributed, where most of our employees are consultants or freelancers, if you will? So think about this. Corporations are changing. I would argue that a majority of the companies today are either going to change or they're going to die. Now, the corporate death means that there's going to be large companies that are going to close. Now, you think about it. Go back to the 1980s. Even this article talks about it. He says, since the 1980s, the likelihood of U.S. companies in the top fifth of its industry are falling out of their tier within the next 5 years, from 10% to 25%. So according to this insight, by the year 2027, which is not that far away, we're in 2016 when this video is being done, just 11 years from now, as the article says, 75% of the Standard & Poor's 500 companies will be replaced. Now, it doesn't say corporations are going away altogether. They're being replaced. What are they being replaced with? They're being replaced with companies that are smaller. They're more compact. They're more agile. They're made up of more freelancers and contract labor. Companies are changing. The times are changing. We are becoming more and more of a globalized economy. Just by the nature of having a website, we are now all global businesses. So think about this. Long-lasting companies like Texaco, Sears, the New York Times, all of them are in trouble. Sears, I grew up around Sears. My father actually worked for the Sears company. As I was growing up, I remember the catalogs. My dad worked in the service and repair industry for 30-some years. Sears is not the company it was when I was a child. It is in trouble. And just by going out and buying another company like Kmart, that doesn't mean that they're going to compete. We're talking about an organization that is now competing with Walmart. It's also competing with Amazon and other online retailers, and it hasn't been able to keep up with the time. So I would argue that in my lifetime, I would probably see the Sears Corporation likely go away, or it would be just a remnant of what it is today. Companies like the New York Times and other online newspapers, or rather newspapers, are moving online, and they're changing their model because their readerships are dropping. It's becoming more and more expensive to run printing press because of the lack of readers. So all of these things are playing out in front of us. The end of the corporation as we know it today is coming. The current trends are indicating it. We're seeing companies go by the wayside quickly. There are companies that were around 100 years ago that aren't even around today. There's even companies that started 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that aren't even around today. Think of Blockbuster Video. They started 20-some years ago. They are now defunct. They're gone. So we have to be creative. We have to be innovative. We have to be agile. We have to get rid of the stodgy, old, top-down, stiff structure. Again, this is not meaning a one-size-fits-all. We have to find the solution that fits right for our culture, our company, our product line, and our customers. That's all I have for today. Thank you for joining me. You can check me out on Twitter at Maximum Change. Please visit us online at MaximumChange.com, where you can reach out to me and communicate. I do blabs on a regular basis here. You can also check me out on YouTube, where this video will also be found. And our YouTube channel is Maximum Change TV. Hope you have a great day, and thank you for joining me, and see you soon.